Hello everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, I'd like to remind everybody, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. So here we are at week 3 of wall-to-wall Kavanaugh coverage, which this past week, I didn't even really bother to document the events of this past week because honestly, it has just been dumb. Everything has been dumb. We've had discussions about ice throwing and the purpose of a second door and whether Kavanaugh was a bully in high school or not. But the one thing that did happen this week that was somewhat noteworthy is the FBI did do their investigation. And as of right now, it is Thursday. They have released the findings to the senators and they have been reading it throughout the day through some kind of form of distribution that I don't quite understand. Apparently, they all have to line up and take turns reading it. I'm like, why couldn't you just, email it to people or print it out or put it on secure USB sticks or something? What in the world is this? Why does everybody have to go and sign up to read it? The way they're distributing it is really, really stupid. And I get that they're trying to do it to minimize leaks, but let's keep it real. It's going to leak to the public anyway. So let's just go ahead and get it over with. But, of course, they've came out with their findings, and it seems, from what I have seen people report, there's nothing new in the FBI report. They didn't find anything to confirm anybody's story one way or the other, which is exactly what I expected the FBI to find, and of course it's not changed anybody's mind. Obviously, if you're a Republican, you're like, yes, look, this gives us cover to vote for him, basically. And if you're a Democrat, you're like, the FBI is bullshit, this investigation was bullshit, and yeah, we're angry. Which, Republicans kind of played this perfectly, thinking back on it now. Jeff Flake really, I was irritated that he did it, and I was irritated that this had to go on for another week, but honestly, congratulations, Democrats, you got played. Because they gave you exactly what you wanted. You got the FBI investigation, which, by the way, we should probably stop calling it an investigation per se. It was really more of a 7th background check. But the Republicans gave the Democrats exactly what they wanted, probably knowing that we would end up right here watching Democrats clown themselves and be pissed off over this FBI background check that they screamed and hollered for and found nothing because, like I keep saying, there's nothing new to be found at this point. So that's basically where we're at right now. It seems to be, at this point, there is going to be a cloture vote tomorrow, and then the confirmation vote will be Saturday at 4:30, as it stands right now. Although Jeff Flake is doing Jeff Flake things right now, and is still pretending like he needs to be convinced about something. But ultimately, I feel pretty safe in calling it right now that he is going to be confirmed. The vote is going to be down party lines, which is exactly what we would have gotten before all of this shit happened. So basically, the last 3 weeks happened for absolutely fucking nothing. We're going to end up in the exact same spot we were in before. He's going to get confirmed. It's going to be along party lines. Democrats are still going to be pissed off about it. So really, what the hell was the last 3 weeks for then even? But I want to go ahead and start kind of going through some of the wreckage of this past 3 weeks, especially the past 2 weeks since, the Kavanaugh hearings, which, believe it or not, were a week ago today. It feels like they were a month ago, but actually, right now, as I'm sitting here recording this, they were still going on. God, it feels like these news cycles make weeks feel like months. It's insane. But I want to go ahead and kind of start talking about some of my overall views on what has happened. Not really on specific issues like I did last week, but kind of an overall bird's eye view. And the first thing I want to discuss is this current political environment is just getting less and less rational. It feels like by the hour. This whole thing has just been trying to come up with just crazy, insane shit to say. Nobody, I feel like, is looking at this in a rational way anymore. Except for myself and maybe a couple of other people. Because this is all just it's gone completely off the rails. And what I see a lot of people doing is, again, forgetting that Kavanaugh and Ford and Ramirez and Swetnick, who we'll talk about that in a minute, but mainly Kavanaugh and Ford, because those seem to be the two that everybody has bought in the most on. There's a lot of people projecting onto these two people who, like I have said, I will say again, these are actual real life people. They're not actors. This isn't a television show or a movie. These are real people that actually exist and have actual lives and spouses and children. But a lot of people have turned these two into like these avatars in which to project their own emotions on. Whereas if you are somebody who is inclined to dislike white men, you're projecting that onto Kavanaugh. If you are somebody who is inclined to believe all women or is a sexual assault survivor yourself, you're taking those emotions and projecting them onto Ford. And people are making their decisions based on those emotional reactions to these two people who are not being viewed as people anymore. So I really, that's kind of bothersome to me, because I feel like we're getting away from that fact that these are people. And another thing that I've seen in this kind of same strain, and I want to go ahead and try to be somewhat delicate about this, because I will go ahead and say I have never been a victim of sexual assault. So I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but I see this kind of, and I noticed it when I was watching the C-SPAN coverage of the hearing last week. While they were in like recesses and stuff, they were having people call in. And for the people that believed Ford, there was this strain of thought that went like, I believe her because I am a victim too, which I'm sorry for everybody who's ever been a victim of sexual assault. I'm sure it's horrifying. I'm sure I wish it never happened to you. But I don't like this projection, like I was saying, onto Ford and believing her particular story because of your particular story. Like, I would like to think I would be able to, if I was a victim of sexual assault, to at least be able to take a step back away from myself and say, okay, this thing happened to me, but that doesn't mean that every situation that is presented to me happened in that same way, or that every single woman's experience is my experience, or that I should automatically believe what somebody says because I'm a victim of sexual assault and they are saying that they are too a victim of sexual assaults. Like, there still needs to be some level of fairness and rationality that needs to go into this, and not just blind emotion. And that's what so much of this past 3 weeks has been, is just blind emotion and tribalism and just people locking down. And just the longer this went on, the more and more people locked down into their camps and just refused to even see or hear or entertain anything that didn't agree with their narrative that they had already made in their head of who they were going to believe, who they weren't going to believe, what they thought happened. And the problem is, and I know I've said this before, but we're never going to know what happened. So the only thing you can do is try to be as impartial and as rational about this as possible. But it's becoming very, very hard to still be the rational person in the sea of everybody seems to have lost their shit over everything. And yeah, that bothers me. I really think the emotional temperature in this country needs to be ratcheted way, way, way down. Everybody needs to take a big step back, breathe in, breathe out, look at this situation, try to look at the facts, try to put your emotions to the side on this, and just try to adjudicate this as fairly as humanly possible. But since we're on the topic of emotions, I want to talk about the topic of men in particular expressing emotions in a public setting. Now, obviously, this is in reference to Kavanaugh's opening statements, which I discussed a bit last week, and I still maintain that I'm not mad at how he did that or how he came off. I don't know if that was the best venue, but I mean, you got to go with what you've got. But this very sharp division has taken place, and it's along this lines of him being emotional and displaying emotion, which I thought that was what we were supposed to be moving towards, is men being able to display emotions and kind of shedding this whole idea of toxic masculinity where you have to keep your emotions bottled up and you have to pretend like you don't have them and you never cry and you never get angry and you never do any of that. But what I'm coming to kind of understand, especially the Kavanaugh thing is kind of brought this into focus, is when people talk about men expressing emotions, it seems to me that they want men to express emotions, but they want them to do it in the same way that women express emotions. And that's not how this works. Like, men and women express emotions differently. And if you ever needed a case study, you can look at Ford's opening statement and Kavanaugh's opening statement. Like, obviously, Ford was upset, but she was more subdued, obviously. But she was still kind of like on the verge of tears the whole time. Whereas, obviously, Kavanaugh came in and he was very angry. He was yelling. There were points where he was openly crying. And it's kind of, I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. But if you're wanting men to express emotions, and really anybody to express emotions publicly, sometimes it's going to happen in ways that look like what Kavanaugh did, especially when we're talking about men, because there is social conditioning going on here, and there is different temperaments amongst men and women. I mean, there are differences between men and women, but if you're wanting men to express emotions, you have to be comfortable with the fact that sometimes one of those emotions is going to be anger, and it's going to look exactly like what Kavanaugh looked like. And that's not to say that he was wrong in doing it, but this weird reaction to it, I was really kind of taken aback by how many people were taken aback by it. I don't know, it struck me as weird. I'm still kind of trying to unpack it. But the one reaction that really kind of irritated me to the Kavanaugh opening statements is people taking that situation right there and basically saying, oh, look at that, he is temperamentally unsuited to be a judge, which, oh, okay. All right. To say that, you would have to be somebody who believes that you can judge somebody based on one particular instance. And in this case, it's an extraordinary instance. It's very extraordinary. I mean, the man's been accused of multiple sexual assaults, and it seems like none of this is really panning out, especially over the past week. A couple of stories have just dead ass fell apart. So once you start looking at it from that perspective and understanding that, yes, he was angry, but yes, he had a reason to be angry. He wasn't just angry for no damn good reason. And trying to apply that to a whole life's work. Like, he's been a judge for over a decade. If he was somebody who was prone to having fits of temper, either on the bench or off the bench, I'm sure at this point we would have heard all about it ad infinitum at this point, and I have not seen a single story come out saying that, yes, Kavanaugh has a temper problem. So, this idea of taking this one super extraordinary instance and trying to use it against somebody really doesn't sit well with me, especially when you're talking about a person who has a body of work that you can go back and look at, and you can make that decision based off of his 10 plus years on the bench. Like, you can make these decisions and completely just ignore the opening statement if you want to. And another argument that I've seen vis-a-vis his little outburst is that if a woman did it, she would be deemed hysterical. And I'm just like, well, by taking that one instance and saying that he is not temperamentally suited to the job of a Supreme Court justice, are you not making that hysterical argument just in a different format and towards a man? Like, you're basically saying that he's too hysterical to be a Supreme Court justice. That's what that argument boils down to. So I thought that was really interesting, and I thought there was a lot of hypocrisy in that statement and in a lot of the statements that people made, especially based on his temperament. Because like I said, you can't judge the man's temperament from this situation. It's too bizarre, it's too crazy, it's too way far out of left field, and there's way too much reason for him to be openly angry, for you to assume that that's like his baseline temper. I don't get that. I don't get it, and I don't agree with it. But moving on from that, another thing that this whole situation has shown is just how much politics dominates everything in society right now. Like, this whole Kavanaugh confirmation thing has just sucked the air out of the room ever since the letter was first released. Like, the past 3 weeks, this is all anybody has been able to talk about. And not just in our political nerd circles, like the people that are normally the only people who care about Supreme Court justice confirmation hearings. Like, this is not normally a topic of conversation in the culture at large, but now it is, because of how this was handled and everything surrounding it, and just everything is now so political that, like, you can't, kind of going back to wanting to be able to have rational discussions, it's like everything is so emotional and tribal right now. It's like, and it just, this really just shows, it's like I can't think of a single, like, area in the culture at large that isn't dominated by what's going on in politics right now. And that's really not healthy. Like, even as somebody who follows this kind of stuff, obviously I do this podcast, obviously I have my Twitter account, I talk about this stuff all day, but having it seep into every fucking aspect of society is just, there's got to be, like, some place you can go where you don't have to talk or think about politics. And right now there isn't one. I mean, it's everywhere. It's sports, it's movies, it's television shows, it's music, it's pop culture now. Politics is pop culture. And it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't such a toxic topic right now. And it's just, this past couple of weeks really drove it home. I mean, obviously we've talked about this before, and plenty of other people have talked about how politics has just pretty much washed away everything, but this is getting to a point where it's like, okay, we need to step back and, like, okay, let's get politics out of some of this stuff. Like, let's start cleaning up some of these spheres and kind of getting back to like non-political television, or even, God help us, non-political comedy. Like, I don't even know if we can get back there anymore. All comedy is political now. Like, you can't just be funny. It has to be about politics. Like, people even gave Norm Macdonald shit for his Netflix show, and him specifically saying he was not going to discuss politics. It's like, yes, like, somebody just wants to have normal conversations with people that don't revolve around Trump or anything involving Trump or politics in general. It's like, yes, please, thank you, Norm. But then people gave him shit about that. It's like, and especially the comedy thing is its own topic in and of itself, and especially what's happened to comedy and how we've basically gone from comedy being something where you're playing for laughs, and especially comics that did talk about politics before our current situation typically were not very complimentary towards politics. So it's basically played for laughs and played to be kind of a way of discussing things in a kind of less abrasive way, although there are a lot of very abrasive comics that discuss politics. But you can't even do that anymore. So it's like, can we go back to a simpler time? Maybe can we wind the time back? I know we can't, but I'm hoping that maybe someday we can get back to some level of normalcy where everything isn't political and people can be funny and TV shows can just be about whatever the hell they're going to be about, and movies can just be about whatever the hell they're going to be about, and we don't have to make everything this whole political shit show. On the topic of political shit shows, I would be absolutely remiss if I didn't visit one of my favorite punching bags, which is Congress. Specifically, not even the past 3 weeks. Let's wind it all the way back to the original confirmation hearings. The Senate has been such a fucking clown show about this. Especially the Judiciary Committee. Here's the thing. As soon as Kavanaugh's name was put out there, I think it took Schumer maybe an hour before he tweeted that he would do anything possible to block Kavanaugh from being put on the bench. An hour after the dude's name was launched. People made their decisions on whether they were going to vote to confirm Kavanaugh or not before dude even uttered one fucking word in his confirmation hearing. Before anybody even bothered to look back at his old cases, to look back at anything he might have said as far as judicially. Everybody made their decision based on party lines before the confirmation hearings even happened, which, seriously, it was a joke. The confirmation hearings were a fucking joke, and there was almost no point in even having them, because all anybody did was grandstand and show off and try to get their 15 minutes. Nobody bothered to ask any kind of substantial questions to the man, especially about things like, his Fourth Amendment stance maybe? Maybe somebody could have stopped grandstanding for a fucking minute and asked him a question about that. But no, nobody did. Everybody took it as an opportunity to be on television and to have fucking Spartacus moments and to basically just make general fucking asshats out of themselves. And it's annoying because I don't like Congress. If they disappeared tomorrow, I'd be fine with it. But if they are here and if they are getting paid a sum of money to do a job, then you should do your fucking job. And if what your job happens to be is to ask questions of a Supreme Court justice nominee to determine if he is fit to sit on the bench at the Supreme Court, maybe try to at least pretend like you're being impartial and pretend like you haven't already made up your fucking mind, and to maybe try to take the process a little seriously and maybe ask the man some questions that might be pertinent to finding out if he would make a good Supreme Court justice or not. Come on. Nobody took that seriously. Nobody took the Kavanaugh Ford hearing seriously. Basically, it was once again one group of people, the Democrats, taking the opportunity to basically either put sainthood on Ford. I think Kamala Harris actually called her a real American hero. And at least Republicans had the good sense to farm out their questions to somebody else who would actually be impartial and maybe actually ask some decent questions. But it was just a total farce. It was a shit show. Why is this even happening? Can somebody please at some point take this seriously? I mean, it was a hearing mainly to adjudicate on whether or not Brett Kavanaugh did or did not sexually assault Ford. Everybody seems to have forgotten that was the purpose of the hearing, was to figure that out, because nobody really asked any questions about that. And I'm just like, why? What is the point of doing this if you're not going to take it seriously? You might as well just have had the vote as soon as the guy's name was launched. Like I said at the top, we are going to end up exactly where the fuck we would have been had none of the last 3 weeks happened. It's going to be a straight up party line vote. He's going to get confirmed. And I don't know what you do with the damage that the last 3 weeks has done. This is really fucked up a lot of things as far as political discourse, cultural discourse, being able to view any of this as a serious thing and not some kind of just a TV show. That's what I keep going back to, but I think it's almost taking on that tone for some people. You're watching Law and Order or something, and it's no, this is serious business, people. Can somebody please attempt to look like they're taking it seriously? Somebody? Anybody? I guess not. So here we are. But to move on from Congress to the group of people that it's really 1 and 1A for groups of people that I am most pissed off about for this whole debacle, and that is the media. Jesus fucking Christ these past 2 weeks. And I know I talked about it last week because the Ronan Farrow story had come out with the Deborah Ramirez story, which, just to follow up on that, they released another story last night, Ronan Farrow and Jane Meyer in the New Yorker, talking about, or at least referencing that story, the Ramirez story, and get this, they dead ass ran this. I cannot fucking believe it. Basically, who they're trying to claim is their source for where they got the information was somebody who came forth anonymously because they did not want to be involved in this. That man said that he had heard from another man who was allegedly an eyewitness to this happening, but they got in contact with that other man, and he said that he doesn't know anything about any of this shit. So basically, I am so done with the media right now. Like, it amazes me how many people have gone into the tank for this. Like, especially someone like Ronan Farrow. Like, his reputation is now trashed, honestly. Like, you really destroyed what was, I mean, he actually won like a Pulitzer Prize for his work on Harvey Weinstein, and now you're doing this shit? Like, really, dude? And it's not like he's the only one. Like, plenty of other people have gone all the way in on this to the point where it's obviously partisan. Like, there's no dicing it any other way. And of course, this isn't anything new. I'm not dumb. But just the extremes it's gone to over the past 2 weeks have just been completely and utterly out of bounds. Like, I am so, what the fuck happened to standards? Like, what the hell? I thought, like, there are actually journalistic standards. I know this might come as a shock to some people, but usually there are, and they've apparently gone out the window throughout the last week. And I want to talk about a couple of certain instances. Going back to old Julie Swetnick. Now, obviously, she is the one who Michael Avenatti was representing. She is the one that accused Kavanaugh of being gang rape adjacent, saying that he was part of the gang rape gang, but she didn't see him rape anybody, and he didn't rape her. So she goes on MSNBC, and she's doing an interview, and she basically just implodes, like, walks back pretty much everything in the sworn statement. Basically, we go from gang rape gangs to, I don't know, I saw a bunch of dudes standing outside a door and laughing. And it's just like, are you fucking kidding me? Could possibly somebody, before running this story, have, I don't know, checked any of this? Maybe? I don't know. Just a thought. But, and it goes to this whole idea, not even idea, it's this thing that I've seen lately of non-sourced and thinly sourced pieces getting published. And I swear to God, if I see one more story or one more tweet or one more anything from anybody in media that contains the words, if this is accurate, or if this turns out to be true, or anything along those lines, because how about this, motherfuckers? Why don't you try verifying, see if the accusations are true, if your story holds up, before you fucking run the story? That's your job. TMZ does a better job at this than the mainstream media does right now. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Why are you running with things if you don't have actual sources for them, that you have verified that this is an actual story and not just some fucking half-baked rumor that you decided to run with? Because, once again, it fits your agenda. And it fits the storyline that you've already ascribed to. So it's just like this whole, the past 2 weeks, it's just been, no. But another thing that I see happening a lot now, well, not a lot, well, actually, yeah, kind of a lot, now that I think about it, and that is stealth edits. Now, if you don't know what a stealth edit is, basically, if you publish a piece in, let's say, the failing New York Times, for example, and information comes to light after you publish the piece that something in the piece is incorrect, you can edit a piece But if you do edit an already published piece, you're supposed to include a note at the bottom, an editor's note, to tell the readers that, yes, I have edited it, and I edited it from A to B. Like, I got this person's name wrong, or I got this fact wrong, or we added information, whatever. What a stealth edit is when you do that edit, but you don't put the note. You do not let the readers know that you have usually subtracted information from the original piece, or altered original information to make it look a little differently than it did originally. And the New York Times has been popped for doing this a couple of times over the past couple of weeks. And it's just like, wow, on what planet is this okay? Like, again, standards people, this is journalism 101. You don't edit a published piece and not tell your readers that you edited the fucking piece. It just makes you look so bad, especially when what you're editing is taking out information that doesn't fit your narrative. Because that's admitting you have a narrative. And that you're willing to basically lie to your readers by not telling them that you're editing a piece to push your narrative. And it's just, I mean, I know this is nothing new, but the past couple of weeks, it's just been completely and utterly out of control. And another thing that's gotten completely out of control over the past couple of weeks is something I call the incorrect tweet. Basically, it's when somebody, usually somebody in media, somebody with a huge following, puts out a tweet saying XYZ. And then, in the replies, are told that XYZ is incorrect. But instead of deleting the incorrect tweet and tweeting correctly, you leave the incorrect tweet up, which obviously at that point has already gotten thousands of retweets and tens of thousands of likes, and you just post like a little correction tweet that you know is not going to get anywhere near the traction of the original tweet that you have been shown to be fake, to be false, to be factually incorrect, usually by dozens, if not hundreds of people in the replies to the tweet. And the most recent one came up yesterday, and I forget who did the original tweet because so many people ran with it. It was just like so fucking stupid. But there was video of Lindsey Graham talking at some Atlantic conference, but he's up on stage, he's being interviewed, and I don't really know the context of this, and especially since Lindsey Graham was making this really weird, bizarre argument that somehow we're in a better climate right now than we were during the Clinton impeachment hearings, which I don't agree with that at all. But what he was doing to help make the point is he was stealing like little like quotes from James Carville from back during the Clinton impeachment trials in relationship to what he said about Paula Jones, specifically the old quote that Paula Jones is what happens when you drag a $100 bill through a trailer park. It's a fairly famous quote. Like, even I, at 37 years old, automatically recognized the quote. Like, just from the text of the tweet itself, when I saw that quote referenced, I'm like, oh, that's the Carville quote. And they posted the video of him saying this in the tweet. However, the way it was framed in the tweet was that Lindsey Graham was saying this about Ford. And that was factually incorrect. And anybody who would have watched the video attached to the tweet would have known, because it was discussed in the video, that he was taking Carville quotes. Like, he was making the point that at least we're not there. Like, okay, well, we're at much worse places, Lindsay. But anyway. But it was just like, you made this tweet. Did you not even fucking watch the video? Or did you watch the video and just decide to frame the tweet the way that you framed it, knowing that that would go wide and that people would not bother to watch the video and would just assume whatever the fuck you were saying was the truth, that this was what Lindsey Graham was saying about Ford? And it's just like, again and again, everybody in the comments with half a fucking brain who either A, remembered the quote, or B, watched the fucking video, called him out on it. Did he delete it? No. It even got to the point where Yahoo News ran with it And they ended up having to delete their tweet because they framed it in that way. And it's just like, what is wrong with you? Like, shit's bad enough. You don't have to make things up. Like, there's plenty of actual, factual bad shit you can report on without putting words in Lindsey Graham's mouth. Like, this is just, and that was just the latest example, but there's plenty of people who have done that. And again, it's not something that's just new to the past 2 weeks, but it's something that's really ramped up, and it's to the point where it's like, I don't know if you can ascribe this to accident anymore. Because obviously, when you tweet something and you know your audience, you know when something's going to go wide or not. So you know if you phrase things in a certain way, or even if you say something that is factually fucking false, your fan base will tweet it out because it's what they want to believe. They want to believe in what you believe, and they want to believe in whatever bad shit you can make up about somebody. So they just run with it. And it has no basis in any kind of reality whatsoever. But as long as we're here talking about social media shenanigans, another thing that I've seen come out, and I see it more on social media than anywhere else, is this kind of binary idea that if you believe one person, like if you believe Kavanaugh or you believe Ford, you have to automatically, by default, think that the other is lying. And no, you do not. And I discussed this last week, but I will reiterate it. I think that both people were telling their truths, but we're not going to know the truth. And so, no, I don't think either one of them was lying. I think both of them were being honest to what they believe in their head and in their hearts what happened. So, this whole binary idea that, like, you have to believe one or the other, and then if so, the other person is a lying liar. It's like, no, you're not. You don't understand that there is a lot of gray area here. And there's also been a lot of conversation about how memories work, and especially memories from a long time ago, memories where there's alcohol involved, and how certain things may imprint on certain people. Katie Herzog actually did a really nice piece talking about this, where basically saying that she believes both parties, as I do, but she's looking at this from the idea that maybe this did absolutely happen the way Ford said it did, but that Kavanaugh just doesn't remember it because it just wasn't an important thing for him to remember, which is kind of not all that kind to Kavanaugh, but it does bring to mind the kind of the idea that memories are very, like, suggestive. Like, you remember what you remember, and you do that for reasons that are, like, unique to you. Like, the way your brain works, the way you remember things, the way, like there's a lot of gray area here. So this whole binary of thinking that somebody is lying because what they say contradicts a person that you want to believe is just really ignorant to me. And it's just really ignorant of a lot of the issues, especially, like, scientific issues, kind of going around this idea of memories and how they work. And I want to start wrapping this up, but I want to wrap this up on a fairly serious note. The thing that has bothered me the most about this whole situation is the idea of weaponizing sexual assault charges. Now, accusing a man of sexual assault right now is probably about the worst thing you could possibly do. And especially when you're accusing somebody of just vile shit, like what Kavanaugh's been accused of. Like, somebody accused him of gang rape, people. Like, this is not funny. This is not a game. Accusing people of sexual assault it's serious business. It's something that stays with you for the rest of your life, even if you are proven to be 100% innocent. And this idea that you can just accuse someone of sexual assault, and that should be enough to do whatever it is that your aim is trying to do. Whether it's trying to get somebody to drop out of a Supreme Court confirmation hearing, whether it's you're trying to get somebody to exit a certain platform, whether it's you're trying to, whatever it is you're trying to do, like it's serious business, and I don't like how it's now being treated like it's some kind of like little game. And can we not do that, people? Please, can we please leave sexual assault as a very serious matter? Like, I was reading, Emily Yoffe actually wrote another great piece where she's actually been following Title IX cases for a while now. She wrote a great 3-part series for The Atlantic on kind of doing a deep dive on Title IX cases. But she's talked to a lot of young men who were accused of sexual assault through Title IX cases. And she said every single one of them at some point contemplated suicide. Think about that for a second. Like, that's serious business. And I don't want this to ever become a thing where somebody ends up taking their own life over something that ends up being false. You know, like, and that's where we're at now. It's like, it's that damaging. The stakes are that high that somebody would actually contemplate committing suicide because they're being put in this position. Like, that's so real. That's so real, and that's so ugly and hard, and just, I don't like this. I don't like where we're at right now. I don't like the things that are being lumped in with sexual assault. Like, I don't think flashing somebody is sexual assault. I don't think that, saying the wrong thing or making a joke. I mean, sexual assault and rape have had very distinct definitions over time, and I don't want to see these goalposts moved anymore, because it's just, when you start making everything sexual assault, then nothing is sexual assault. And sexual assault is a thing. It is an actual physical thing. Rape is a physical thing. Let's not move these goalposts to it being something that's this weird, nebulous thing that you can just throw at somebody and ruin their fucking life. Like, no, we still have so many issues in this country with women feeling free to come forward and prosecuting these things. And I don't want any reason for a woman to not feel okay with coming forward, and making it this charade, this fucking farcical nonsense is just going to encourage more women to not say anything, and that's not okay. So I want to end with that note. As always, if you've made it this far, thank you. And if you do like it, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, and YouTube. Take care, and until next time.